Good afternoon, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. How many of you know about Turning Point? I've heard of Turning Point. Okay, all right, several people. For those of you who don't know us, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the University of Kansas Health System. We started out as a not-for-profit. In 2001, a friend of mine and I started Turning Point to fill gaps in support services for people living with serious or chronic physical illness in our community, for the patients as well as their support system. So we grew and grew and grew, and then started talking to Bob Page in 2010 about what it would look like. We actually went to him for money because we were going to all the hospital CEOs and showing them how many of their patients we were seeing, and we were going to ask them all for a lot of money. And Bob was the first one we talked to, and the first thing he said was, "Well, would you consider a more formal relationship?" Never gave us money then, but he gave us a lot of money now because it kind of took over our budget. But so it took us a couple of years to figure out how to do this because we were a community resource and we saw patients from all over the community, and we didn't just want to be for KU patients. So when we figured it out, Bob said, "We want you to see everybody in the community," and so it was a win-win for everybody. It was really great. So we are part of the health system, and we take referrals from O2. You can find us in O2, and or you can send people. It's completely free. We do not charge insurance. We do not charge the individual. As long as the person is living with a serious or chronic physical illness or are the supporter of someone, you can come to all of our programs for free. And last year, we provided 822 programs to over 10,000 people. So take a look at our website, which is turningpointkc.org, or you can find it through the hospital website. Just look up Turning Point, and you can see all of the programs that we do and learn a little bit more about what we're doing. So today, I'm going to be talking about resilience, and this is a resilience model that I adapted from research that I was involved in graduate school. So my PhD is in community and health psychology. And so I was interested in resilience back then. A lot of people were interested in resilience. This was about 30 years ago. And so we did some research. And what was interesting about resilience is that there was an agreed upon definition, and still is, but back then and not even today, is there an agreed upon set of constructs that determines who's resilient and who's not? So it's kind of an interesting concept because everybody knows what resilience is, but if you talk to the emotional intelligence people, they're going to tell you if you're emotionally intelligent, you're resilient. If you talk to the optimism people, they'll say if you're optimistic, you're resilient. So what everybody did is they took their thing, or the thing they were researching, and said, this is resilience. So what we decided was, it's not just one thing that makes someone resilient, because you can be really optimistic and really bad at self-calming and expressing your emotions, and that doesn't make you resilient. So what is it? So what we did is we took everything. It was a particular professor named Jerry Sheridan, who we took everything that people said made you resilient, and we threw it all into one assessment. He was creating a test, an assessment for research purposes, and then we gave it to hundreds of people and had different biomarkers and things like that. And then finally, when you are creating a test for research purposes, you have to factor analyze it. And he factor analyzed it and found 3 distinct factors that separated the resilient people from the non-resilient people. And when you looked at what loaded on those 3 factors, you could see that every single one of those could be trained. Because also back then, 30 years ago, people were saying, we think it's innate, and some people were saying, no, it's environment, you can learn it. So there was that battle going on too. So what we discovered is that whether you're born resilient or not, and I do believe people learn resilience, that you can learn to be more resilient. So what I did is I took Sheridan's research and pulled the things from those three factors, and we created a program around that. And you'll see there's overlap to some of these concepts, but what we know is that this works. If you teach somebody all of those things, if you have all of those things, you're not only going to be resilient, you're going to be a really highly functioning human being. And isn't that what we all want to be, is the best person we can be and function the best that we can in any kind of situation. So take a look at those. You know, if you can self-calm, if you take good care of your body, if you know how to replenish yourself and not let yourself get completely depleted, if you can control your emotional reactivity and temper your perfectionism and be optimistic and hopeful and party and find meaning in your work and your life and have a good social support system, you are going to be able to handle anything that comes your way. So what I realized so this is the underlying philosophy of all of our programs at Turning Point. And our programs have to train some, if not all, of these facets. And the programs that we have, it's not psychotherapy and it's not the traditional support group. What we're doing are time-limited, skills-based programs, teaching people all of these things, because I thought, you know what, we cannot necessarily control their disease process, but we can teach them how to control their reaction to their disease process. And that's what we do, and we do it really well. You'll see some slides with the statistics on how it lowers anxiety, depression, and distress at such a significant level. And so then what was happening is people were saying, well, gosh, I wish I would have learned these before I got sick. So we started going out into the community when invited and doing them for well people and organizations. And when we joined the health system, we started doing more of that. And now we are doing a lot of nurses training in this model. It's a train the trainer. And what we're doing within this health system is we're training nurses how to create a culture of resilience within their areas, and also other leaders, so that the whole culture of a unit or a group starts to look and think this way, so that everybody is better at handling whatever comes their way. Because wouldn't it be nice to be able to, in any kind of situation, no matter how bad it seems, to be able to say to yourself, I got this. And we can all do that. We can all go into any situation, no matter how difficult it is, and have that feeling of, I got this, I know what to do. And there's no secret sauce or magic thing. It's really looking at these things and practicing these, and also having some basic philosophies of, so my mentor in graduate school, one of the first things he said in the very first day of the health psychology class is, the very first thing he said was, there's no escaping the human condition. And I thought that was a really smart thing to say, because sometimes people go to graduate school to escape that human condition. And especially in this health psych course back then, there was this movement in psychology where people were thinking they could think their way well and stuff like that. And so he was putting that to a stop right away. So if we remember, there is no escaping the human condition. That is number one. And if we also remember that every time we meet a difficult situation, we have a choice to cope or fall apart. We really do. Everybody does. Some people don't know that. And so they let life pull them here and there, and they don't realize that they have a choice to cope or to fall apart, because they don't have the skills to cope. So they fall apart. We also have to remember that life does not owe us comfort and ease. It really doesn't. But some people have the belief that life owes them, and that life is really naturally stressful. And we can find meaning in all of our experiences if we just look for it. So there are some of these basic philosophies or guiding principles that I think we all need to have. I think you guys, because of the profession that you've chosen, which can be highly emotional and high intensity and very unpredictable, I think it's really important for people who choose professions like you guys have to live these and model these for the people around you and for your patients, and also to buffer the effects of the stress and that high intensity that goes along with your job and the unpredictability that goes along with your job, and understanding those other things that I just said. You know, walking into your world with that philosophy will help you cope with whatever comes your way. The other thing that, so besides these individual facets, which we're calling resilience, I've been calling resilience, but what I've realized is that it goes way beyond resilience. These are the 10 facets of high functioning humans. You know, it goes beyond your ability to bounce back. It really is, if you can do these things, if you do them well, you're going to be really high functioning. You're going to be a really high functioning human. So there's that piece, and I keep saying I'm going to change the name from resilience to something else, and I haven't figured out what else to call it. But then when we joined the health system in 2012, it was the first time I'd always done my own thing, and it was the first time I was in a really large system with a whole lot of people that I didn't know, a whole lot of people that I didn't choose. It was just a completely different system to be in. And so I started observing behavior, started observing people, because that's what I did, because I'm a psychologist, and I like to observe behavior. And so I started observing people, and what I realized was these are also the underlying characteristics of great leaders. I saw really great leaders, and they were good at these things. And then I saw leaders that weren't so great. They were bad at those things. And so I thought, wow, so if we teach people these things as early as we can, and we are teaching kids these things, but if we teach people these concepts and these skills, then they're not only going to function really, really well in their jobs and in their families, but they will even be great leaders and have those foundational characteristics of great leadership. Whether you're a leader at bedside, whether you take a leadership role in whatever organization you end up in, these are just things that we all really need to know. So this is data from Children's Mercy Hospital. We used to do this program at Children's Mercy. It's a 9-hour program. And so we collected data there using the inventory that Dr. Sheridan created from that research that we did. We don't use that anymore. When we joined the health system, we changed measures. But we found, so we did it with clinical staff, and we found that it significantly increased, you guys remember that, I'm sure you had to take some kind of research statistics class, that it significantly increased the resilient skills of those of the staff at Children's Mercy Hospital. And then this is the data that we've been collecting since we joined KU Health System. And we changed the measures to the promise measures because NCI said, we'd like for all the NCI designated hospitals to use the same measures, and we're advocating for David Selle's promise measures. And so a lot of the NCI designated hospitals are using these promise measures, and they're really good. And so the one we're using is the global distress scale, which measures anxiety, depression, and global distress. And this data we analyzed this a couple of years ago. It was 544 cases, which is a really good sample size. And every time we've analyzed our data, we've found that this model reduces anxiety, depression, and distress at the 0.001 level. And remember your p-values, that's crazy significance. So really, we're obliterating anxiety, depression, and distress at Turning Point. We're also collecting, now that we're doing a lot of nurses training and doing a training program here, like I mentioned, and we are collecting data from the nurses, and we haven't analyzed that yet, but I expect it to be similar, you know. So the other piece too is, and we don't have a lot of time today to talk about the whole culture thing, but I just want to introduce it as, in order to have a really high functioning team and culture, you have to create a culture of resilience. It has to become, you know, your key thought leader. It starts from the top down, it does, and everybody has to have an agreed upon mindset, an agreed upon vocabulary, and agreed upon commitment to those 10 facets that you saw on that previous on the previous slide. And then what you see, and there's lots of research out there on this, you see all of these great things, lower turnover, decrease absenteeism and presenteeism, and just stronger teamwork, less drama. We have another PowerPoint that just looks at the culture piece and system, how to identify system stress and anxiety, which I think would be important for you guys all to learn too. And before I start talking about these individual skills that were on that resilience wheel, I want to mention another thing that is used really successfully with first responders. May as well use it with nursing. And it's not only these individual skills, because you really have to have these individual skills and work at them and practice them. But there's another piece around that, and it's about what is your narrative? How do you see yourself as you move through your world and as you make the choices that you make, and why did you choose nursing? And what was it about nursing and KU and wherever you end up? What is your narrative? What gets you up in the morning, and why do you do what you do? And what we found, and what the research has shown with first responders, is this piece is really important in buffering against trauma. And it's not just, I think everybody here could say why they chose what they chose, but it's reminding yourself why you chose what you chose when the times are tough. So it's not just knowing it up here, it's knowing it here in your heart and living it every single day. So think about it. So if I had a smaller group, we would talk about what's your narrative, why did you choose what you've chosen? And I've asked nurses throughout the years and other folks, but the responses I've gotten from nursing, I'll just give you three. One of them was, one gal was talking about compassion and caring and working with people, and that makes sense to go into nursing if you're that kind of a person. Another one was really driven. She was a really wiry, competitive, strong gal who was really driven to heal and to help people get better. And so that was her narrative. And then another one, when I asked her, and I didn't know what this meant at first, but I asked her, why she chose nursing, and she said 312s. I'm like, okay. And you guys know what that means. I know what it means now, but I wasn't sure what it meant then. But this gal was had a lot of outside interests. She was a triathlete. She loved to travel. And at first I thought, well, that's not a very good reason to go into nursing. But then I realized, no, if you're really good at what you do, and if you're kind to the patients, and if you're a high functioning human, 312s, I mean, hey, that's a good deal, and then you have the rest of the week to do whatever it is you want to do. So what's your narrative? Think about that, because that is the second layer. So if you look at different layers, you've got individual skills as the core, you've got that narrative piece, and also the roles that you play, which we'll talk about. And then the third concentric circle is really the system that you're in. And we all know about burnout, compassion, fatigue. And it's not just you and your individual skills that contributes to burnout and compassion fatigue. It's the system that you're in. And that's why I think system pieces are so important for all of us to pay attention to. So now going into these individual skills, so the ability to self-calm, if I asked everybody in here, do you know how to self-calm? Everybody would say yes, right? You know how to calm yourself down. And then the next question is, well, do you do it? I mean, how often do you do it? And so that's a whole other thing. So you have to do it. And I don't have time today to go into all of the details, but you already know about the physiology of the stress response. But there's an emotional aspect to it that is not taught in nursing. And I can come back to that if we have enough time. But that ability to self-calm, it's more than just, can you get calm when you're sitting on your couch at home, by yourself. And even if you practice, we all know people who meditate every single day, or they say they do, and then they go out in the world and just fall apart. But so it's more than just getting calm while you're sitting on your couch. It's then can you take that calm into the world with you? So then you look at these other layers of questions, and it's okay. Can you get calm? Can you stay calm? People are like, sometimes, kind of depends on where I am and what's going on, right? But the goal is, can you stay calm regardless of what's going on and where you are? That's where you do the work if you can. Do you need other people to be calm in order for you to be calm? You can look at the workplace, you can look at your family, okay? And other systems that you exist in. And that's an important question, because the goal there is you shouldn't need other people to be calm in order for you to be calm. And then do you need to remove yourself to get calm? And a lot of people say, yeah, I need to remove myself to get calm. And that's okay. But the goal there is get good enough at it that you can get calm right there in the moment, in the chaos, and not have to remove yourself. That's where you want to be. Because we all have this threshold of how much we can handle before we start showing symptoms. And those could be physical symptoms, it could be emotional symptoms, it could be a headache, it could be muscle tension, irritability. That's what I mean by symptoms. And so we all have this threshold. And what we have to learn or know is, where is our threshold? And then I believe we need to constantly work on ourselves and increase our threshold. I've been doing that. I started meditating when I was 25 years old, and not because I was going to increase my threshold. I didn't even think about that then. I just thought it was a good idea. And so I did, and I noticed that my threshold was increasing. And have I reached perfection and I'm living happily ever after? No. And if anybody ever tells you they have, they're lying, because this is something that we work on until the day that we die. I think we should all be working on ourselves. And once we hit a pretty good threshold where a lot of things in the workplace aren't bothering us, then go into the hard places, because we always behave better at work than we do with our families. So you may think, pretty good at this in the workplace, but I could use some work over here with my siblings, my kids, my mother, my father, whatever. That's where you do the work. That increases your threshold, and then you can take that into the workplace. So I think that's really important for us to be able to do that. And the key is practice, practice, practice. I was doing this one time, and somebody said, well, easier said than done. And I said, of course it's easier said than done. I mean, you wouldn't sit on a couch and read a book about fitness and expect to be fit when you finish the book, right? So this is the same kind of thing. You got to get up, you got to do it, you got to practice it, you got to get fit. And that's the key. You just have to practice. And it's really all about self-awareness. All of this stuff is about maturity and self-awareness. And when I say maturity, I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about, your ability to manage your stress and handle all of those things that come your way. So I may come back to this, but I want to move on. So there are certain things that you can do that can help you calm down. First of all, we have on our website, on the Turning Point website, there's a resilience toolbox on the front page that you can click on, and this would be great for you to send your patients to, or for you to look at yourself. And then there's a self-calming section where there's 6 different relaxation exercises. So if you really want to get started on this, pick out one of those relaxation exercises and listen to it. Some of you guys have apps. Does anybody have apps for relax? Which ones do you like? Headspace? Okay, I know about Headspace. Anybody else? Anybody use Calm? Calm's really good. What else? There's another one that's real popular. I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, so there's apps you can use. But here's something really easy to do. And it's something that a group of researchers in San Francisco called HeartMath studied a lot, and they call it paced breathing. And they discovered in their research that if adults can slow their breath rate to 5 to 7 breaths per minute. It balances the autonomic nervous system, yet they remain alert. And so to lower your breath rate to 5 to 7 breaths per minute, it's really, because you don't want to time it, it's breathing in for 5 counts, breathing out for 5 counts, or breathing in for 4 and out for 6. It's really easy to do. If you're really tense, it's hard to do, and then that tells you that you're really tense, but you just keep practicing it, and you'll notice that it gets easier to do. So, and by breathing in and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you're inhaling and exhaling, it gives you something to do to occupy your time. It works. It will calm you down in minutes, and it's something you can do anywhere, under any circumstances, while you're driving, while you're walking, while you're sitting here. Just remember that paced breathing. Breathe in for 5, breathe out for 5, or in for 4 and out for 6. And the other thing that they added to that, so people say, I can't meditate. I've tried to meditate, my mind wanders all over the place, and it just agitates me, and I don't have time, and all of those excuses for why someone can't meditate. So the heart math folks say, well, can you daydream? Of course, everybody can daydream. So they studied this, and they found that you can get the same benefits from doing this paced breathing and then thinking about things you love and appreciate. So daydream about things you love and appreciate. It could be anything. It could be building a house if you really want to build a house, or planning a vacation, or for me, it was when my son was 2 years old and he'd crawl up into my lap and I'd read to him. All the stress just melted away. And there's all kinds of things that work for us. But really, you are meditating if you slow your breath rate down and just think about things you love and appreciate. And what they found in their research is that if you do this 3 to 5 minutes a day, several times a day, you're making a difference in retraining your body to learn to relax. So really important piece. Paced breathing, daydream. And give yourself permission to do that. Give other people permission. If you're creating a culture of resilience wherever you go, build these kinds of things into your workday, into your teams. So physical self-care, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we all know we need to take care of our bodies, right? So we need to eat right, we should exercise, we should get enough sleep. Now, the first responders, one of the things that works really well for them, because sometimes they're just so uptight that they can't calm themselves down. So what these psychologists will do is tell them to go run for their life or fight for their life, meaning do wind sprints, do short bursts of physical exercise, because it is like running for your life and fighting for your life. So you know about the fight-flight response. And when you go into that fight-flight state, when you're really not fighting or fleeing for your life, your body doesn't know the difference, and it has to expend that energy. And if you don't find a way to expend that energy through problem solving or self-calming, then you can do something physical. So, I tell people, if you can't calm yourself down, if you're just way too wired and uptight, and you can't use these other skills that we'll be talking about to calm yourself down, go do something vigorous. Go run the stairs. Go run in place somewhere. Go, do jumping jacks in the break room. People will think you're weird if you do that. But, do some kind of short burst of physical exercise. It really will calm you down. Okay, ability to self-replenish. Another important aspect, which is something that doesn't happen often enough in healthcare because of the demands of the day. But 2 researchers named Clifton and Rath, they were Gallup poll researchers, wrote the book, How Full Is Your Bucket? Have anybody read that? Okay, so if you haven't, it's a cool book, and it's called How Full Is Your Bucket? And they have a lot of research in there, and when they wrote this book, they had, they polled, it was over 100,000 people, I think, a bunch of different industries. So they collected a lot of data before they wrote this book. And there's a kids version. So if you have kids, get the kids version. It's really cool. But so it's about, so what we've learned from this research is that, we all have this bucket, that's either full or empty, and this little dipper, and we either fill our buckets, fill other people's buckets, or dip into other people's buckets, or they dip into ours, and the buckets get empty. And what this is about is, how good are you at telling when you're getting depleted? And then do you look ahead and plan? So let's say you're going to have a busy week, and maybe every week is going to be a busy week for you because of what you do. Then you have to build in self-replenishment time. So for me, I build in exercise because I like to exercise. So always build in exercise. Always make sure I exercise. I do not let work take over my exercise. I'll find a time to do it. I'll find time to, make sure I watch a favorite show, or, there's lots of things that you can do. And this is a cool thing that you can do with your teams, is look at what can you do to refill your buckets at work and at home? Because when I ask a group, how do you replenish yourself? What I hear first are things that they do at home. So I like to cook, or I go exercise, or I play with my dog or walk my dog, or I go, read or something like that. But what the research shows is that, yes, it's important to have things that replenish you outside of work, but you have to have things you can do at work. So think about that. What can you do at work? And depending on where you end up, what unit you work on, or what what your job duties are, is going to determine what's feasible to do at work. So what we have teams do is, we discuss with the smaller teams when we work with them, all right, what's acceptable to do? And sometimes it is acceptable. So it's funny, you guys can relate to this, I'm sure. When we ask people what they do at work, some people say, go to the bathroom. Really? That is a replenishment activity, to just go to the bathroom, but you know what I mean, right? And so we ask them to do a little bit more than that. That's great, you should go to the bathroom, that's really important. But, what else can you do? Can you walk away for 5 minutes? Can you go get a cup of tea? Can you, what are the different things that you can do that your work group can do and reinforce in each other? And it could be telling jokes, it could be humor. It could be, taking a little break and walking around the halls with a friend, or, something like that. So pay attention to what you have in your life that fills you up. That's really, really important, related to resilience. And within that, which also is a part of that first responders work, is, what are the different roles that you play? So if we have a small discussion group, that's what we talk about. Look at the different roles that you play. Your mother, father, sister, brother, employee, nurse, manager, whatever the different roles that you play. So you've got this work role, and some people take that work role home with them. And it's about being able to leave the roles behind when you move on to the next role. And that takes practice to do. But it's really important to be able to say to yourself, okay, I have this role, but I am not this role. And you don't take it home with you as the only role that you have. So emotional expressiveness. So I could spend hours on this by itself. And this is what it sounds like. Can you identify your emotions? The physiology of emotions, which I'll talk about here in a second. Here's an interesting piece. Can you tell the difference between thinking and feeling? Can you move from a thinking place instead of an emotionally reactive feeling place? Really important. I know so many people who think they're moving from a thinking place, but they're moving from a feeling place. And it's really understanding. You have to understand yourself. You have to understand the emotions. Does anybody here know Paul Ekman's work at UCSF? So Ekman, if you Google famous psychologists, you get Freud and Skinner and all those old guys, and Paul Ekman. Okay, he's still alive. He's still doing his research. The Dalai Lama meets with him regularly, so he's really way up there in the cool factor of the Dalai Lama. But he has done work worldwide on emotions. He has spent his entire career on emotions. And he has identified, based on research that he did worldwide, 7 basic emotions that everybody has, regardless of culture or environment, or ethnicity. And what those are anger, sadness, fear, joy, surprise, contempt, and disgust. Those are universal emotions because we have an emotion called jealousy. Some other cultures don't have that emotion, so these are the emotions that he found across cultures. And so any other emotion you can come up with is a version of one of those 7 emotions or a combination of. So someone would say, well, what about frustration? Well, depending on how you're using that, frustration could mean anger to you, or it could mean a combination of anger and sadness. Jealousy could be anger, could be sadness, could be fear, could be all 3 of those. The other thing that we know is that anxiety, which we call an emotion a lot, anxiety is really the symptom of emotions unexpressed. So if you're feeling anxious, look for one of those emotions underneath. So sometimes people will say, I'm anxious, or they'll be feeling anxious when they're afraid. Sometimes they'll feel that way when they're stuffing anger. So I had a friend who lost her husband in a really tragic accident, and she would call me and say, I'm really anxious. I don't know why I'm so anxious, but I'm feeling so anxious today. And it was always grief. She just didn't know what to do with the grief, but it was expressing itself as anxiety. So just remember that anxiety, when you really look at your own anxiety and what you're anxious about, you might be feeling anxious because you're worried about somebody, or a family member, worried about yourself for some reason. And what is that? What's underneath worry? Fear, probably. So look at those basic emotions, and you'll see that any other emotion you can name falls in that category. So it makes it easy for you to think, okay, there are these 7 emotions, and surprise, I'm not sure what to do about surprise. Surprise is surprise, right? Doesn't seem, could be good surprise, bad surprise. But the key is know thyself and understand when you're feeling these emotions. And that's easier said than done. It gets kind of tricky because your ability to recognize emotions is based on the system that you grew up in, which is your family system and how they did emotions. So some people, their family doesn't do anger. And so very often the kids growing up in that family may not recognize anger, but when they get mad, they cry. Or sometimes the family doesn't do sadness or fear, but they do anger a lot, And so when they get sad or afraid, they get mad. So you might see, and then that's an adult who's just mad all the time. And then there's this scale of functioning. It's kind of a hypothetical scale of functioning, and it has to do with, we'll just call it a continuum of functioning. But on that low end of the continuum, this is related to emotional expressiveness and reactivity, and just overall functioning. But at the low end of the scale are the folks that can't tell the difference between thinking and feeling, can't control their emotional reactivity. And so those are the guys that are shooting each other at parties and stabbing each other when somebody makes them mad, okay? Then you get higher up on the functioning scale, and the behavior gets better. Maybe they don't shoot each other, stab each other, but they're yelling all the time at each other. Still not good, but better than the other. Then you get higher up, and people are better behaved. Well, there's a neuroscientist named Richard Davidson at University of Wisconsin who studied this a lot, and other neuroscientists in that area of brain neuroplasticity are studying this too. But he discovered in his research that when you have a good connection between your left prefrontal cortex in particular and your amygdala, you're going to be higher up on that functioning scale because you're better able to control your emotional reactivity. So we all know about the amygdala, right? And how the amygdala responds in your limbic system to every single thing that is happening to you. And depending on your connection between your amygdala and your frontal lobes, particularly the left side, he discovered, will determine how well you behave. So, and it makes sense, right? Because our frontal lobes are designed, I mean, one of their purposes is to mediate the activity in that limbic system, so, and our emotional responses to the world. So when you have a good connection, you're going to say to yourself, not a good idea to stab that person. Actually, you wouldn't even think of stabbing that person, you know, but your behavior would be better, okay? You would not even think about doing those things that aren't so, you know, that aren't so well behaved, because you have this good connection from that intellectual part of your brain to that limbic system. What they've discovered is that trauma, and I'm sure you guys have had somewhere along the line, you know, trauma-sensitive training and what happens to the brain, you know, when kids grow up in traumatic environments. But the more traumatized that you are, the more trauma that you've experienced in your world, the less likely there is going to be a connection from that frontal cortex to that amygdala for you to be able to mediate your response. And it also, what Davidson discovered, is people who have a good connection between between those two parts of the brain are more resilient, because you can let things go. You know, maybe something bad happens at home, and do you carry it with you all day, or can you leave it at home, let it go, come to work, and do your thing? And that's that difference between that connection between the left prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So, and the cool thing is what they're discovering from this research that they're doing in brain neuroplasticity is you can change your brain. If you don't like the way your brain is wired emotionally, you can change that brain until the day you die. It's really great news for people who aren't particularly fond of the way they respond to their world. With thoughtful attention, you can change that. So here's that paced breathing that I talked about, and another technique to calm emotions. And both of these come from HeartMath, but a lot of other people do them too. So I talked about the daydreaming, paced breathing. So we can have Jenny send this PowerPoint to everybody, you know, so you guys can look at some of these things. Then the other piece too is, what do you do when you have a strong emotion? And you need to feel it and let it go so you can move on. You know, what happens when something really bad happens at work and you can't let it go? What do you do? Well, this is what you do, and we know it works. What you have to do is you have to identify the feeling. So let's say it's sadness, okay? So you identify the feeling. You can just imagine it in front of you. You can feel it in your body, whichever works best, but you have to have the feeling there, know what the feeling is, and then you do that paced breathing, so you breathe in, and as you exhale, you imagine, so you can imagine as a big ball in front of you, just imagine it melting away with each exhalation. So you breathe in for 5 counts as you're exhaling, and the HeartMath folks recommend that you say the word ease. You don't have to. I've done it before where I just put the emotion there in front of me, and I actually feel it inside, because I think that's a little better to do. And I'll breathe in, and as I exhale, I just picture it melting away, so it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the power of that feeling will go away in minutes. And it doesn't mean you don't problem solve around it. You may have to do it, but it's never good to try to problem solve when you're in the middle of that emotional state and that emotional reaction. So does that make sense? I know it's really fast, but here's the key to that. You can't think about why you're feeling that way while you're doing it. So you just have to focus on the feeling, and that's the hard part. That's the part that sabotages people when they try this, because how hard is it? Think about how hard it is to not think about a reason why you're mad. Think about anger without thinking about why you're angry. But you have to take that reason out of it and just feel the feeling. Because what we know from this research on brain neuroplasticity is there's this circuit when we ruminate, so we start thinking about something, and it follows almost the same circuit into the limbic system that the same circuit as when it actually happened. So we can re-traumatize ourselves by thinking about something that happened when it happened 2 weeks ago, and our bodies can have that same physiological response based on what we think about, even though it happened weeks ago. Hardiness, very cool concept. A researcher named Salvatore Matti in Chicago, I think at Northwestern, and a gal named Suzanne Cabasa started this research back in the 1970s. So there's a whole lot to hardiness we can do. So this training is, 9 to 12 hours, when we, not just on hardiness, but, so there's a lot to say about hardiness, but think about this. It's about commitment, control, and challenge. They discovered from their research, and there's lots of research done on hardiness, that people who have these 3 characteristics do better. They do better physically as well as mentally. And they did some research early on, and of course it's been replicated over and over again in other environments with Illinois Bell Telephone back in 1974. And where they followed employees, they knew deregulation was going to occur, telephone companies, and they just didn't know when. So Illinois Bell Telephone let them assess and keep track of their management on up. And here's what they collected. So started collecting the data in 1974, Illinois Bell Telephone. And here's what they collected. Personality characteristics, social interaction patterns, signs of stress, strain, motivation, and beliefs. They also looked at job evaluations, promotions, demotions, and medical information. All right, so then deregulation occurred in 1981, and they followed them for 6 more years, and here's what they discovered. 2/3 of the population that they were following fell apart. 2/3. That's pretty significant. And here's what happened. Heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure, cancer, suicide, a much higher percentage than the other 1/3. Psychologically, depression, anxiety, excessive spending, divorces, dependency on alcohol and drugs. 1/3 emerged victoriously, they said, resilient, and rose to the top of Illinois Bell Telephone, went to work with other companies, started their own. They found that these characteristics of hardiness were more protective, and so that 1/3 had all 3 C's, and that it was more protective of physical and mental health than exercise and social support combined. And we all know how great those are. There's lots of research on that. Sense of coherence. That is a concept created by Aaron Antonovsky, who was studying Nazi concentration camp survivors. And after the camp, some people were thriving and doing well, other people were falling apart. And he found that the people who were thriving and doing well had a sense of coherence, which is the belief that life is manageable, meaningful, and comprehensible. So that goes back to that, what I talked about earlier is what brings meaning into your life, what's your narrative, why do you do what you do? It is very protective, being able to find meaning and find order. And these concentration camp survivors were even finding order in the concentration camps, and how can you say the world is understandable, and meaningful, and, but what these guys would say is, our world was predictably unpredictable. We woke up every day not knowing something bad was going to happen, but not knowing what or to whom. And so, working in a healthcare system is not, not the same as a Nazi concentration camp, but it's still, you don't know, depending on where you're working, you don't know what you're going to meet every day. So it could be, you could say it's predictably unpredictable and be okay with that. and be up for, and then you go back to hardiness, you know, okay, I'm committed, you know, I have control, you know, this is a challenge. And, you know, there's the difference is, can you stay involved and not sink into detachment and alienation, you know? Can you take difficult situations and turn them into advantages for you? Can you see the positive in what just happened? And back what I said earlier, and you know, when we first started talking, is that life is naturally stressful. It does not owe me comfort and ease. And if you walk into life with those 3 C's, you know, and the belief that life is manageable, meaningful, and comprehensible, you know, that meaning piece, and all of those other skills that we talked about, then you are going to be able to handle whatever comes your way. Hope is, Rick Snyder defined hope as willpower, way power, follow through. It's, do you have goals? Do you have a way to reach those goals? And can you see it through? That's another piece. We don't have a lot of time to talk about it. Optimism. So much research on optimism and pessimism. And optimists do better. They recover from surgery faster. There was research in the nurses study about how optimists live longer and suffer from less chronic illnesses. I mean, you know, no good reason to be a pessimist. Okay, perfectionism. So perfectionism runs rampant in the healthcare system. And of course, we want our healthcare workers to do things perfectly. But for you perfectionists out there, and I know you're out there, perfectionism has 2 components, the high standards and the critical piece. What we teach people here is we're going to show you how to get rid of that critical piece, keep the high standards, because that's what you're attached to. You're not attached to the critical piece, you're attached to the high standards. Let us show you how to get rid of that critical piece, and you can keep the high standards. And social support. It's giving and getting social support. We go back to the hardiness piece. That's a piece of hardiness as well. But what they say, what the guys, you know, Kabasa and Maddie found, is that it's really about the quality of your social support network, not how many people do you have around you, but what is the quality of those relationships. And where some people would advocate, get rid of those toxic relationships, don't, you know, just don't mess with those people that are bothering you. Again, it's going to be a case-by-case individual basis, but really what you want to do is move towards the troublesome ones and try to work it out in your social support systems. I hate to leave you with that. Almost time to go, but there's a whole lot more to say about that. So why don't you just forget I said that. And if we ever talk about social support, I'll explain more and give you some skills to talk about, to think about. So it doesn't stress you out thinking that you have to move towards the really big problems in your world. But if you look at these 10 things, and you can see that, wow, if I can do these, I'm going to be able to handle anything that comes my way. So my advice to you is take one at a time, you know, and just work on it. And if you pick just one, you're going to be changing, you're going to be increasing your threshold to handle whatever comes your way. Just picking one of these things. You know, if you pick self-calming, that's going to help take the edge off of the perfectionism. It's going to help quiet your emotional responses down. It's going to help you with the physical self-care. You know, just taking one little piece, you know, one facet of these and just working on it and then saying, okay, now I'm going to take this next one. And we have materials and we have PDFs that, you know, if you guys, we have a couple of workbooks we can send to you in the PDF form, you know, that if you want to work on this on your own or as a team, then I recommend doing that. If you're, you know, we do the training for hospital, for nursing, and you know, you look for it in TLC, or ask Marcy Walker, and you know, Jenny knows how to get a hold of Marcy. You can take the whole training. So it's 2 6-hour days back to back, but people love it, and you know, just going to help you not just at work, but in any endeavor, any system that you're living and navigating. Okay, any questions before we? So we're out of time.